All right, to move on, now we have Dr. Kalpana Sen Gupta. Yes, she is going to have her presentation now, and then one more presentation, and then the forum will be open for discussions.
So thank you, Dr. Fiji. That was really interesting, and thank you, Lakshmi, for this opportunity. And like you said, seeing so many principals around me got me, I was wondering, should I be nervous? But yeah, they are all very young compared to the principals I remember, and not so scary. So here we are, we have got a very well-fed and a child who has come to the school, who's had balanced nutrition, following Dr. Fiji's advice. And now, but my focus would be on emergencies at school. As we know, emergencies can happen anytime, and we need to be prepared for them. We need to know what is our response going to be, what are the safety precautions we can take. So that's going to be my focus. And schools actually face a lot of emergencies. As we know, the majority of a child's time he's spending at school. So their behavior, their inherent problems, if they are suffering from any long-standing illnesses, all that contributes. But what kind of emergencies are we looking at? So what will be our objectives? We'll first identify what are the types of school emergencies that one can expect, learn what should be our immediate response steps, and understand how to prevent and be prepared to face any emergency. As we know, as we always say in medicine, prevention is better than cure. So let's be prepared. The four major types of emergencies that come to mind are the medical emergencies, environmental emergencies, natural disasters, and security threats. Now, if I go through these, medical emergencies are some things that I have the expertise to talk about. Environmental, I'm sure the fire hazards, the chemical exposure, gas leaks, transport accidents, power outages, these are things that you need to be even more prepared for. And at the facility level, you must be having security checks and drills happening regularly. Natural disasters, we don't know when they will strike us. As we had, the floods sometime back in Dubai, unexpected, but it just led to a chaos and disaster. So how can we be better prepared for it? And God forbid, if there are any security threats, unauthorized intruders, violent incidents, bullying practices, bomb threats, or active shooter present in the premises. Now, when this happens, what can you do? Just think of the worst case scenario, be prepared for that, and then you will be able to deal with anything on hand. Now, as I said, coming back to the medical emergencies, most of the medical emergencies that we see when children are at school are injuries. Injuries can be small, injuries can be big, injuries can be minor, injuries can be fatal. So we need to be able to differentiate, we need to be able to judge that this is a serious incident and what should we do. Apart from that, some other examples, common examples are asthma attacks. Now, asthma, unless it's a first episode, more often than not, you will have it in your child's medical record. It would be recorded over there and you would know what to expect in this child, and your school health nurse or the doctor would be prepared to deal with it in an appropriate manner. Going further, I will just highlight a few of the things that we as doctors face when children come from schools to us and what we would like you to do better. Seizures, convulsions, to be able to identify that this child is having a seizure and what is the most important thing to do at that time. It's important. Allergic reactions are common. Allergies are on the rise in the world. So we have to be better prepared. We have to have this on their medical record, ask their parents, and also be very careful about sharing of food at school. Sports injuries are bound to happen. You cannot bring it down to nil because our children are active and that's going to happen. Falls and fractures are common. So these are some of the common emergencies. Some of the common scenarios, again going further, is like fainting episodes. You have an assembly or you have a situation where students are standing for a long period of time. More often than not, no matter what advice we give them, half of them don't have breakfast. They come to school just unprepared for the day ahead, so they don't have any reserves to fall back on. And fainting episodes are common. Bleeding episodes are common. So these things have to be handled. What should be our first response? The first response is to remain calm and assess the situation quickly. Why do we have to remain calm? We are surrounded by hyperactive children. If a teacher or a principal, obviously the principals of repute, of experience, they know all this. If you show your anxiety, the children are going to be even more anxious. So you have to be calm, you have to take control, and you have to assess the situation. You have to take action steps. What are they? You all have school nurses, you probably have a school doctor too. So please call upon the emergency services, provide the immediate first aid. Now here, I would like to know how many of you are familiar with the basics of CPR. So that is very important. As senior teachers, senior principals, whether certified or not, just having the know-how is very important. What to do, what is meant by CPR. So we want to know whether the child is breathing fine, child is having enough of blood circulation in the body or not, and the airway is open. These things are not difficult to judge, to assess, and each one of you should be able to do that. So that is important. If there is a known allergy in any patient and the parent has given you the permission, mind you, it has to be written permission, but certain emergency medications like EpiPen can be kept in school and they can be administered by the registered health professionals. That has to be done. What would you do in cases of seizures? So in cases of seizures, the most important thing is to prevent further harm, because if the child falls down, hurts, gets head injury while convulsing, if they have a tongue bite, these things add to the original problem. So you have to put the child in recovery position. What is recovery position? You have to tilt the child on one side with the head and the body on the same side. Why are we doing this? We are trying to just see that these secretions flow out of the mouth and they don't go backwards and choke on the child, right? So this is important, and you prevent further harm. More often than not, the seizures would stop. If you have the emergency medication available, you could use that. And bleeding control. Now, as far as bleeding control, the only thing, basic thing to remember in terms of bleeding is pressure works fine. So pressure is what is needed. This is common sense, right? So you apply pressure and immediately try to control the bleeding. More important than anything is, do not get anxious, do not transfer your anxieties to the child, maintain the dignity of the child, maintain the privacy and confidentiality of the child. This is very important. And documentation. Now this is where I really want to stress that you need to record the incident details. Whoever is a first responder, whoever has seen how it went about, what happened, the sequence of events should record it, and actions are taken for the medical follow-up. You may have a child who's seizing but has stopped, but then you will think that this child should be seen by a medical professional. It's very important for us to know the sequence of what actually happened and what was done. So documentation is very important. In cases of fire emergencies, like in any workplace, you need to activate the alarm system. You need to evacuate in orderly manner. This is very important, and assemble at designated points and wait for all clear signal. This is now, unless this is practiced, children will not know what to do. So you need to make them aware, and you need to practice this definitely with them. In terms of natural disasters like earthquakes, there is a drop, cover, hold. Yeah, this is what is taught to the children. Drop, cover, hold. That means get under sturdy furniture, protect your head and neck, stay away from windows and unsecured objects, and remain in position until the shaking stops and evacuation is ordered. So now this is not only for school environment, this is obviously earthquake anywhere. And in terms of flooding, you move to higher ground. Yeah, whenever there is flowing water, nobody should try and cross that. And severe storms, again, you need to have shelter in place. So these are things which you need to have regular drills for each type of natural disaster. It helps instill the proper reactions or automatic responses. They should be inbuilt. Like doctors, when a child is brought to the emergency, we are trained to look at the child. within the first 10 seconds, we can differentiate, right? This is a minor one, or this requires my immediate attention and what kind of attention. Similarly, once you do the drills, you will be prepared for it. In terms of violence and threats, you should have lockdown procedures or protocols in place. In terms of bullying response, again, establish clear reporting systems. Children are very scared to report this, and the ones who get bullied are low in, as it is low in self-esteem. I'm sure Dr. Burgess will be able to explain more on that. But we should give them enough confidence that they can come to you. They have that rapport with their teacher, they have that rapport with their principal, where they can report such incidents. If there's no rapport, they are not coming forward for it. Communication chain. Activate emergency communication chain systems to alert the administration, security personnel. These are things very, very important. So teachers must remain calm during violent incidents or threats. Your demeanor directly influences how students will respond. So prioritize protecting students while following the school safety protocols. So this is important. Now, in terms of communication, you have internal communication, that is the public address system announcements. Please check them from time to time. I'm sure in schools they are being used daily, but these checks have to be done. Two-way radios for staff communication when other systems fail. Designated runners as backup if the electronic systems are down, and text message alerts to staff. Parent notification. This is missing at times. We've had cases where the children have been brought to us and the parent says the child came home with, and I noticed that this is this. So we ask them, okay, what happened at school? What led to this? And they say, we did not have any communication from the school. Okay, go back and ask the teacher if she's aware. Go back and ask the students in the class if they are aware. So this is very important, that if any minor or major incident happens at school with a child, the parents have entrusted their children in your care. It's your responsibility to involve them and inform them. So school app push notifications can be used for real-time updates. You can have dedicated emergency information hotline. You can have website updates. Based on the different schools and their protocols, they will choose whatever it may be. Then authority coordination, direct line to the local emergency services. Everybody should know what is the ambulance number. It's not the responsibility of only the school nurse or the doctor. Everyone should know these emergency numbers. And liaison officer should be though assigned to work with the responders, first responders, sharing of school maps and safety plans with the local agencies, and regular coordination meetings. Now this is all, if we do this much, we have won half the battle. So coming back to what is the role of teachers and staff, they are the first responders, they are drill coordinators, they should be medically aware of certain basics that is expected, and they should be able to provide emotional support. This is very, very important. And what is the role of students? Students are always expected to follow instructions. You will always have that one or two naughty children in the class who are not listening, but you have to make them listen. They should stay calm, they should know the evacuation routes, which will happen only through repeated drills, and they should report concerns. They will report concerns if they are able to have that confidence in you, then only they will report concerns. So what is emergency preparedness? You have the regular drills, conduct them routinely. You have staff training, provide the first aid and CPR training for the staff members. Refresh your training annually. Just trained 10 years ago is not good enough. Emergency supplies should always be available and they should be checked repeatedly, and you should have documentation and planning. So what are the key takeaways? I would like you to just think about emergencies can happen anytime. I'm talking now, 2 minutes later, I can have an emergency here, right? So emergencies can happen anytime. We need to be prepared, because once we are prepared, we can save lives, and for this, teamwork is essential. So you have to have teams that are trained properly, and you include periodically different people in the teams so that your entire staff gets the exposure and training. This is important. So preparedness today prevents panic tomorrow, and panicking is not good for any of us, right? So thank you for your commitment to create safer schools. Thanks for this opportunity.